Welcome to the new class here at the Chess Club. And we have a new place to teach, which is good. This is an endgame class that we'll have every Tuesday. We're going to try to talk about practical endgames more than theoretical endgames. So we're actually going to show endgames. Instead of endgames that didn't happen, we'll show endgames that did happen. What I'd like to do throughout the lecture is talk about things that are important in the endgame, especially if they're different than what you would expect in an opening or middle game. So probably the most important things I'll say before the lecture, and then when they happen in the games, I'll mention them. Your king has to be more active in the endgame than in the opening or middle game. Don't tell that to Steinitz, but in the opening you want your king to be safe. And if you were just here from Mike Kummer's lecture, you'll notice his opponent's king usually wasn't very safe. And in fact, I wasn't sure about that, but I had a long discussion about it with Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman, and they assured me it wasn't safe. So moving your king up in the endgame is very important. Also having passed pawns is important, more important than the opening, because passed pawns and queening pawns is usually how you win. And also of importance is the activity of your rook. In the opening, usually the rooks are in the corner and they're not doing very much. In the endgame, rooks are much better than minor pieces. In fact, I would say the first 15 to 20 moves of the game, probably knights or bishops are better than rooks. And the last 20 moves of the game, the rooks just dominate. Now, here was a game I had a few years ago against FIDE Master Stamnov. I was black. This looks pretty drawn. And the reason it looks pretty drawn is that it's pretty drawn. Okay, this should be a draw if both sides play well. We have the same number of pawns, same number of bishops, and same number of rooks. Now, the reason it's probably better to have black, not that the computer would agree, is that black has a pawn majority on the king's side, which could possibly get him a passed pawn, whereas it's hard for white to do that on the queen's side because white has doubled pawns. Okay, so I started with g6. I want to push my king side pawns up. Rook to d4, h5. Okay, so I'm advancing on this side. I have more pawns. Capablanca would be proud of me. b5. Now b5 makes a lot of sense because white wants to trade his doubled pawn and give me a weak pawn. For example, if I just take the pawn, it looks like it's hanging, right? Okay. Now, how does white win back his pawn? What does he do? Don't all raise your hands at once. Anyone? See this pawn here? Rook b5 eventually. Right, rook b4. There's no defense to rook b5. And then he'll have 2-1 on the queen's side, and he won't have any doubled pawns, so that would be nice. I don't want him to undouble his pawns, so I played bishop b6, attacking his rook. Now, if his rook moves up and down, maybe I will take that b5 pawn because maybe his rook can't go to b4. But he played rook a4, and now if I take on b5, obviously he'll play rook b4 again. And now I play a5. And now he's made a little positional mistake because my bishop is really fantastic now. Okay, so b4 I think is forced eventually, otherwise he can't move his pawns forward. And I play king d6. And basically, his queenside pawn structure is impotent as far as moving forward and gaining a passed pawn. I have total domination of the c5 square. His pawn majority is not very important. Also, my king can become more active than his king, and I've really shut down his rook. He can't play rook to d4 check. So now black has an obvious advantage. My bishop's better than his. My majority can move forward. And his majority I'm just going to attack with my king, rook, and bishop. Okay, he played rook b2, which is really passive. I think he wanted to play rook to d2 check. I played king c7. Can somebody tell me why I played king to c7? It sort of goes against the rule of activating your king. But what other piece was I interested in activating? Yes, Elliot? The rook on b8 wants to move either to this open file or perhaps this open file. But I can't move my rook now because my b7 pawn's attacked. So I defend it, and now I'm ready to play something like rook a8, rook a3. He played bishop e4, which I think is a mistake. because now my rook gets active. And now he has to defend his c3 pawn, which he does, and I advance my majority. And yeah, once I play bishop c5 and b6, he doesn't really have a majority on the queen side. He can't move. My rook's more active than his, and my pawn majority is becoming active. And let's go back a move. I want to explain king e7 to you. Obviously, if I play g5, he just takes it. If I play f4, he also takes it. So the way to advance my majority is to play e5, e4, etc. Well, don't be too quick. If you play e5 here, which I didn't do, now bishop f7 attacks all of my pawns. And then I probably would have lost. Okay, so since I know he's going to play bishop f7, I play king e7 first. And now I can play e5, and his bishop can't do anything. Okay, so I'm advancing my majority, and his majority doesn't look very impressive. And he tries to activate his king, and unfortunately for him, his king could actually get in trouble. And I played rook a8, and actually the next move was pretty hard to find. If you were black and you could move again, what would you do? It asked me to export, and I said no because they told me to. F4 is legal. Very good. Better than some of them in commerce class. Actually, I have a checkmating idea here. I want to play rook to c8, and then his king, and then play bishop e7 and rook c5 checkmate. That'll teach him to move his king up in the opening endgame, whatever this is called. Okay, so he played rook g2, and I was like, okay, that doesn't stop my idea. Rook c8. Now, if it was my move, I would play bishop e7, and I think he would resign. Because I think rook c5 mate is unstoppable. So he played g4, which was the point of rook g2. He's trying to get counterplay. And now, if I play the obvious bishop e7, threatening rook c5 mate with advantage, what does he do? Louder. Checks me here. g5 check, and now when my king moves, my pawn is hanging, and e6 is available, and so forth. Okay, however, if you were here earlier in the lecture, I mentioned getting passed pawns was good. And now black can get lots of passed pawns. So I played rook d8 check, forcing his king away from my pawns. And then I took and played e4. Now I'm going to play f4. And then I'll have two connected passed pawns winning. His bishop is very suspicious on a2. So somehow over the last 10 moves, I've advanced my majority on the king side, and his queen side majority, nothing is happening. It's totally blockaded. And the rest is very easy. h5, f4, and he resigned. Because f3 is coming, and luckily most chess sets nowadays have two queens. So that could be advantageous in this position. Right, because I'm going to get two queens. Possibly more queens later. Okay, this is another game I played in 2009. I'm white against Amir Ghobrial. He's rated approximately 2200. Sometimes he's over 2200. Usually he's a little under. And I was white, and I'm squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. Now white has an advantage because my rook is better than his, and more importantly, my queen side majority is pushing up the board. So I'm going to play b6, a5, a6, and have my usual two connected passed pawns. Now, if it was my move, I would play rook takes a7. Also good. Okay, so my opponent thought his best chance was to go into a king and pawn ending. He played rook to d7. If I don't trade rooks, which is also good, then at least I'm not taking on a7. Okay, so I calculated here, should I trade rooks or should I not trade rooks? And I made the right decision. So we'll let the class think for a little while, and then we can vote. You can either vote for trading rooks, not trading rooks, or? No, Pat Buchanan. Now you've been missing a while. Yeah. I've had this before, and sometimes Buchanan wins by mistake. So, yeah, it happens. So should white play rook takes rook, or should white move his rook away to safety and try to win the rook and pawn endgame? Okay, let's vote. Who says rook takes rook, trade rooks? Who says move the rook away, don't trade rooks? And who says Buchanan? Yeah. Now, Buchanan beat the not trading rooks. The class, for once, is correct. One and only time. Rook takes rook. The reason is my pawn majority is very strong on the queen side, but I can totally stop his pawn majority. Now, b6 does win because my computer said so, but I was more interested in stopping his pawns, so I played king c3. And when I traded rooks, I'd already figured everything out. I have a very simple plan. Okay, I want my king to go here, and then I'll either take this or take this while he's running over here, stopping me from queening. And if he plays e5, to stop king f4, I'm going to play h3, g4, breaking these pawns up, and my king's going to take this pawn. In fact, when I put this on my engine, it only says white's +1. Then if you let it think for like 3 minutes, it's like +50. So it's like, wait a minute, that plan's pretty good, but it has to see it. Okay, so he played e5, stopping my idea, and I played h3. I got to play h3 right away, because if I play king to d2, now he can play f4. And then it gets a little dicey. However, if I play h3 first, which I did, now f4 runs into g4. Okay, and now I'm going to have passed pawns on both sides of the board, and his king can't split in half and have half of the king go to each direction. Okay. Also, I'm assuming taking on f4 wins without doing any analysis. This looks pretty winning. So I guess f4 loses to everything. Okay, so he played king to c7, and he actually had an idea. And I did my idea, and he did his idea. And now he realized if he didn't do anything, I would play g4 and win. So he did something very interesting. He took and played a5, giving me 2 connected passed pawns. And now we're going to vote again. We're going to vote, should white take en passant, which you learned earlier today in Kummer's lecture, or should white keep those 2 connected passed pawns? So analyze in your head a little bit and see what the right answer is. Is there Jeopardy music we can play? Yeah. All right, who says take en passant? Who says don't take en passant? Hey, and who says Buchanan? Yeah. You always vote twice. The answer is, if I don't take en passant, he'll play a4, a3, a2, a1. And if I don't want him to do that, and we're my king over here, then he'll play f4, e3. Then he'll have pawns on both sides of the board. So by taking en passant, I eliminate all of those issues, and now I play the easily winning move, g4. I thought you would know. I know. g4. Now if it's my move, I can play g anything and win. gf, g5, or gh. So he has to take it. I take. And he took this way. If he plays h4, I'm just in time. Wasn't that lucky? The good player is always lucky. Okay, and then I'll queen my g pawn. So he played hg, and for some reason he didn't resign here. He played on a long time. Okay, so f4 would be a blunder. That would draw, but I didn't do that. Okay, and now every legal move wins. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I have 7 legal moves and they all win. That's good for me. You. F4 wins. All right, they all win. Okay, I played f3. Never play f3. And then f4. Now he resigned because if he moves his king either direction, then I go here, and these are my next 4 moves. And they can't be stopped. And I probably promote to a queen. Yeah, right. You could pre-move that. So after f4, he resigned. So the king and pawn ending was winning. I could distract his king going one way, and my king went the other way. This is actually a very important concept. So one thing I want to show you, even though I don't know how to show you new positions, new board window, that's not very helpful. There's no new position? Ugh. Yeah, that's why chess base is great. So you can imagine a position where black has pawns on a7 and h7, and that's it, and white has pawns on d2 and e2. In the opening, you'd probably want the center pawns, but in the end game, if you're pushing your a and h pawns, I don't think white's king can go both ways and stop them. So outside pass pawns on the outside of the board are very good in the endgame. Not only do they beat kings, they can beat other pieces. If you're pushing an A pawn and your opponent's using a knight to stop it, that knight's not going to go to the other side of the board. So outside pawns are very good. Chess space not so good, outside pawns good. And also it's not user error. That's the important thing to remember.
Are you looking for the S key? Isn't that set up?
I don't know. Okay. Now this is one of my favorite games, as long as my opponent's not watching this lecture. Then I may get more death threats than I usually get. Oh yeah, I push Control F. Okay, so this was played in the last round of a tournament in Ohio, and I had 3.5 out of 4. My opponent had 4 out of 4, so I needed to win. Now earlier in the game, I missed a very simple tactic, winning a bishop, and then he would have resigned. But I didn't know that I missed it. Now if you're watching the Anand-Carlsen match, there was a game where Carlsen blundered horribly, Anand missed it, and then following that move, they both saw that black was winning, so it was probably hard for Anand to play knowing that he missed an easy win. I didn't know I missed an easy win, so I had no trouble. Ignorance is bliss. When the game ended, my opponent's like, oh, you could have gone here. I'm like 20 moves ago and I would have resigned. Okay, so we got this ending, which is obviously winning, right, Julian?
Yeah.
Julian's like, wait a minute, shouldn't you agree to a draw here? Okay, now we don't agree to a draw because I need to win to get first place. I have 3.5 out of 4 and he has 4 out of 4. So I need to win this game. Now black's better because I can win a pawn. Hooray. Okay, now my opponent I thought played pretty well here. He played f5. And he's going to lose at least 1 or 2 of his kingside pawns, so he might as well mess up my pawns. Now bishop takes pawn would be terrible. Computer only do it because he takes and my f pawn is pinned. And if I lose all of my pawns, I'm not going to win. Okay, so I can't play that. I didn't want to play this, taking here, because then I have the worst pawn structure ever, and he can take the pawns at will. Bishop here, bishop here, bishop here, and probably I'll have like an extra doubled f pawn and I'll never win. So instead, I played king g7. I'm still going to take his kingside pawns, but I want to keep some pawns of my own that aren't doubled. Okay, once again, he played well. He played g4. And he wants to trade all the pawns off, and I'm not going to win. For example, if I take this, takes, 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 I have a 0.0% chance of winning. Okay, unless I'm playing Ken West, then it's 0.001. Okay, no, I'm kidding. I would just win. What? Unclear. Okay, so after g4, I played h takes g4. Hooray! And he took on g6. And again, with the doubled pawns, I don't have much chance to win, or any chance to win. So I played king takes. I want to play f5. Then I have chance to win. Okay. Unfortunately, white just plays h5 check, which is what he played. I played king f6 because I don't want to lose my f pawn. If I do, I have no winning chances. And now he blundered horribly, which is good because I was playing him. Okay, in this position, black doesn't really have any winning chances. But instead, white decided to draw immediately instead of drawing in a slow fashion. He played king d3, king e4, which is all good, and now he blundered with h6. And when he played h6, he miscalculated. In this position, white can make any move and draw, because if I move my king to g5, he plays bishop takes f7. If I move my king here, he just plays h6. And if I move my king back, he'll play king f5. And there's no winning chances for black. Instead, he decided to draw immediately and get the first place, although he was miscalculating a little bit. You?
So instead of king takes g6, could black have tried to play f5? So after
Am I playing for the loss? Yeah, but f5, h5. f5. Yeah, these pawns aren't very strong because there's these pieces here to stop them. So there's nothing I can do. I can't like push them all. For example, f4, and then here. Draw agreed. No? Who's playing for the win? Why? Explain why black is better.
Because my king's closer to your pawns.
It is? When I play king e2, king f3, it's still closer?
Oh, but right now my king's
Okay, so king f6,
like king
that's what you're playing?
king h6.
King h6, that makes more sense. Overwrite. Okay, here. I'm assuming after bishop takes b7, I'm a pawn up for nothing. So maybe that was better. All right, and white wins. No, it's a draw, but maybe bishop takes b7, white wins. Maybe. Maybe b4 is winning. Okay, so in this position, after the correct king takes g6, we got this position. My opponent didn't want to draw in 20 or 30 moves. He wanted to draw now. So he played h6, calculating all the way to the draw, except he missed one little thing. Missed it by that much, right? Don Adams agrees? Yeah. I played the obvious king g6, and he played the move he was all ready to play, and he was all ready to agree to a draw, h7, and he thought the game would go king h7, bishop f7, draw agreed. But instead, I played the move only Julian can see. But let's call on somebody else. Black to play and win. Overlooked by my opponent. G5 check is close. F5 check. That's what you meant. Right. Yeah. And now, when he moves his king away, I play king takes h7, and I got my two connected passed pawns. Now, I wouldn't resign here, and I wouldn't think of resigning here, but he was distraught over f5 check, thinking the game was going to be a draw. Now realized he's lost, and he resigned. And then he showed me like 30 moves ago I could have won a piece instantly, but missed it. Okay, so that was actually good revenge because the player in question here, he beat me in the last round of the Kings Island Open to tie for first, when I wanted to tie for first. Why don't I tie for first? And that was the tournament where on the way to the tournament, I hit a deer. And then after I hit a deer, what did I say in Homer Simpson's fashion? Doe, of course, of course. So that was terrible. Not only did I hit a deer, but I lost in the last round of this guy. This tournament was better. I won and I hit no deer. Okay. Of course. Okay, the next one is a very suspicious game. It's against Grandmaster Eric Hansen from Canada, who was not a Grandmaster at the time. He was an international master. And we got this position, and I was like, oh boy, what an easy win. Okay, and no win is easy. Especially when you're playing a Grandmaster, they put up a fight. I mean, like, you could be, let's say, 2270 and plus 100 and hang mate in 1. You could be 2230 and have an extra rook at an ending, and it's only a draw. So the Grandmasters are tough. Did you get any of that? No? Oh well. That was making fun of Doug Eckert and Matt Larson in the same sentence. Those were games I was losing back to back, but I got 1.5 out of 2. Because Grandmasters are tricky. Okay, I learned chess on the streets from Run DMC. So this position I thought would be a very easy win, so I played quickly, always a good idea. Right, you watching this, Owen? And I won, and I was like, yeah, I'm great. I won, I played fast, it was easy. Then I looked with an engine, and the engine's like, no, every move a blunder. Okay, you hear me talking, Julian? Yeah. Okay, so he played rook h7, and I'm like, man, 2 passed pawns, oh boy. So I played rook d1, and then I started moving my pawns up, and everybody was happy. Okay, and then in this position, I played f3 double question mark. Who would have thought f3 could be a bad move? Okay, and the way to win here for black is, well, I thought everything won, but black has one way to win. Rook check, obviously he has to defend his pawn. f3, he has to stop my pawn. King d5. Now he has to decide whether he wants me to take his pawn or not. And here, if he checks me, then he's moving away from my f pawn, so I gain a tempo. I get to go here, and again he has to go back. But he's not threatening to play at c7 now. So now the win is just technical. And I gain a tempo by playing king d5. And rook takes loses, because I check his king away to the a file. And this is a very easy win because his king doesn't participate. So that was winning. That was the only way to win. I thought everything won. So I played f3, and I calculated everything, and he played what I calculated. If he had played not what I calculated, then the game probably would have been a draw. So he played c7 double question mark. Okay, and we were both playing quickly. We both thought I was winning, and no problem. And I'll go back and show you how he should have drawn. I played f2. He stopped it from queening. Of course, if he queens, I just check. Then he moves his king, and I just take it. And now I'm ready to queen. And with a queen and a pawn, I can beat a rook, usually. Okay, so he played, instead, rook there, and I queened anyway. And now he resigned, because irrespective of whether he, well, it's in check. And then if he queens, I win his queen. Hooray. I just thought that was pretty easy. I'm a pawn up, I'm queening, everything's great. Then my computer says f3 double question mark, and now he should play rook f8, attacking my pawn. I defend it. And now this position should look familiar to you, because of the other variation where I play correctly. This rook is here, and this king is here. And that position is a win for black, for black. But now he plays king c5, not king b5. The difference is he can go to d6. If his king's on b5 and my rook's on c1, he's never going to play king d6 unless his king turns into a knight. Okay, now if I play, for example, rook check, he plays king d6. Uh-oh. And yeah, this is transposing into the e5 variation, and this is just a draw. f2, rook here, draw. And just, well, okay, I guess if you really want to draw right away, Karl Bohr style, you just take. Okay, and then draw. So it's funny, this position, which I thought was an easy win, that I won easily, had a double blunder in it. That's why we're as good as Magnus and Vichy. We have double blunders in our games too. And then nobody notices them, and we're great. Yeah. Okay, and unfortunately, turning the computer on makes you feel more silly. So these simple endgames are very complicated, the most famous of which, I'm sure you're all familiar, I'm probably boring you with this knowledge you already have, is the game that Fischer played, a rook and pawn ending, and he was completely drawn and just played quickly and drew. And the guy's like, why are you playing so quickly? Oh, it's a dead draw. And then he was shown, I believe by Ullmann, or he was playing Ullmann, that he just lost. He just made a one-move blunder losing. His opponent didn't notice, and they just played fast and drew. So these endings are complicated, and either if you think they're simple, they're not. I'm sure he was upset after the game when the computer showed him that he should have drawn after my carelessness. Okay, so now we're going to have a vote, because voting is fun. First of all, black is in check, and black's going up. Otherwise, f1 queen, then f8 queen. Okay, so this is just a normal position. Black has a rook, bishop, and pawn for a queen. Would you rather have white or black? Well, you have to think about it. It's hard. Right, Elliot? See? People at home are scratching their head in vain to understand the situation. Okay, who says they'd rather have black and have the rook and bishop for a queen? Who says they want to have the queen? And who says we can't? Nobody? We can't. No. Okay, yeah. So this is obviously better for black, because black can't possibly lose. Black has nothing to attack. And white has 3 isolated weak pawns. That's not good. Those pawns can be captured, especially if I'm black, because I want to capture them. It's hard to defend all 3. My pawns are all defended and great. Okay, so I stopped check, and then I attacked his H pawn. He defended it. I attacked his D pawn. He defended it. Nice active queen there. And I just move around, having a lot of fun winning his H pawn. He couldn't save his H pawn because my bishop's on a dark square. And we just take all of his pawns, and there's no stalemate. And he never can check me. Yeah, that was fun. Now if he plays queen g3, rook g5 with advantage. So he played there. Yeah, and now it's pretty clear black's better. Right. So in this instance, A queen's usually better than a rook and a bishop, but when there's no checks and there's no pawns to attack, then black has no losing chances. In fact, there's a lot of interesting positions where a queen doesn't beat a rook and a pawn. A queen and a pawn don't beat a rook and a pawn because of blockades. In this position, black had 0 losing chances because white had no checks and no pawns to attack, but black was winning because white had all these weak pawns to attack, and it was easy to take them and get past pawns. So that actually was pretty simple. Simple's good. Okay, last and least is my game with Dennis. Now, this is very interesting because about 4 years ago, I started playing e4, and generally I was playing d4 on move 1. And I was like, it's time to play e4, and then I can mix it up. And so today, I play e4 and d4 about half the time. Now, I'm playing Dennis Monokroussos, who's an Indiana player, and I've known him forever. And this is at the Indianapolis Open last round. And I was half a point behind the Super GMs because I'd played 2 of them and we drew, and they only played 1 of me. So they were playing each other in the last round, and they were drawing in 5 moves and tying for first. And I had to win to tie for first. And my opponent's about 2350 plus tax. Although don't underestimate tax in Indianapolis. Okay, also I'm in Indianapolis. So, it's a little iffy. And this is the tournament. I just got my car, and I drove to Indianapolis, and a rock hit it on the way, and you can still see it. Because that's Indiana for you. Okay, I have a lot of Indianapolis stories, but they're not really ready for chess club. They're more for if you want to cry all day. Okay, so anyway, I was white, and I was like, well, I'm playing e4 now, but I need to win this game. This is like an important game. It's the last turn I got to tie for first. So maybe I should play d4. And I was like, all right, I'll play e4. I'm playing e4. And we got this position. Obviously, my style is very boring. Now here my opponent made an error, and he thought the game was over. He played queen g8, and he offered me a draw. And he was thinking, if I trade queens, that's a draw. I agree with that. And if I don't trade queens, he'll take my pawn on a2 and be a pawn up. I agree with that too. So he was like, queen g8, finally it's equal. Well, queen g8's a mistake because I play queen f5. And now, queen takes a2 runs into difficulties after knight g5. When you're in an endgame and there's heavy pieces, don't ever forget about checkmate. You can always get checkmated whenever you want to. It's always there. If you try to run away, king g8, you didn't run very far. And if you play queen g8, that's even worse because you're down a queen instead of mated, and you have to suffer. Okay, and g6 loses for the same reason. We play queen check and knight f7 check. Mate. Okay, so after knight g5, black's losing. So he didn't play queen takes a2. Well, in that case, his move wasn't very good. He actually played the best move here, queen e8. Okay, and now I played a shocking move for me because it wasn't boring. Okay, and I remember I was at the Chess Olympiad in 1990 in Novi Sad, Yugoslavia at the time. And at that Olympiad, the British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, resigned. She wasn't the only British person who resigned. A lot of their players resigned too during the Olympiad. Nigel Short was not happy. He was a big Thatcher fan. Okay? There's some people like evil. What are you going to do? Okay, so replacing Thatcher, if I remember correctly, which I don't, I'll be corrected by all you historians in the room, was John Major. Is that right? Anybody? I never heard of John Major. And there was a British guy at the Olympia I didn't know. And I said, what do you think of this guy who replaced Margaret Thatcher? And he said, oh, I like him. He's really boring like me. He says, I want a boring politician. And I was like, I never thought of it like that. Okay, so I try to play as boring as possible. Okay, and so this move will shock all of you. But in this position, I could feel that Matt Larson wanted me to play this move, even though I hadn't met him yet. It's hard to understand. Well, it's not a prediction. I already gave it away. G4, of course. Because I have a kingside attack. I have a pawn majority on the king side. I got to get my pawns going. I don't think my opponent's going to move his queenside majority. He has nowhere to go. Okay, so h6, giving himself some lift. King g2, g5. Rawr. Okay, and again, I can't draw the game because then I don't tie for first. I get nothing. Takes, takes. Yay, now I'm attacking. And I win a pawn. Now, instead of continuing to attack, I decide making 2 queens is a good idea because I have 2 passed pawns. So I start moving my passed pawns. And he doesn't really do anything on the queen side, so that's good for me because I have 2 passed pawns. He sacrificed his knight because he knew eventually the pawn just go forward and win, and he thought he might have perpetual check. And then he would draw the game, costing me lots of money. Terrible. But unfortunately, he only has like 2 or 3 checks. Okay, and here he resigned. Whether he checks me here, here, or here, I play king g4, and I could escape one of these ways. And all my pieces blockade. Although his king got safe. Yay! Nice on a7. Okay, but because I advanced my majority and got an attack on the king side, and his king ran away, I took the g-pawn. Now I had an extra material, and I could win with my pawn majority. Again, as Capablanca would say, I wonder if he would say it, advance on the side you have the majority. I had 3 against 2, so I played g4, g5. I won his g-pawn. I traded for his other pawn. All of a sudden, I have 2 passed pawns. Did black get an advantage on the queen side moving his pawns? As the Germans would say, Ish don't think so. He got nothing. Okay, he did make a lot of queen moves, though. That was very exciting. It looks like the king is carrying a balloon. It's floating him to safety. Right, Mike Hummer? Exactly. Yeah, I took the words out of your mouth, as per usual. Yeah. So what have we learned in the endgame? Practical endgames, like the ones I showed you, they're not the ones in books, where it's just king and pawn against king, and you triangulate, and you get the opposition. There's always complications and counterplay and more pieces on the board. But the same thing is always true. Activate your king, advance on the side you have a majority, push your passed pawns, and if there's queens on the board or rooks, you can still give checkmate. In the endgame, when you get checkmated, it's embarrassing, but it happens. It could even happen in queen and pawn endgames with nothing else. King and pawn endings is tougher. I've seen it, but getting mated by just king and pawns, it happens, but it's a rarity. So I hope you liked this endgame lecture. It was slightly longer than Mike Hummer's lecture, and almost as good. Okay, so we'll see you next week at the endgame lectures here at the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of Leicester's.